welcome to another episode of The Bond. So today we're discussing a topic that is quite controversial, and for that reason, people like to avoid discussing it. I think we would have to continue discussing the issue of sexual harassment because it goes down to the core of our homes, our schools, our workplaces. It's really damaging to an individual, especially like women, if they have to experience certain things at a young age. I just feel like it's time for us to stop shying away from discussing these topics and then get down to the bottom of it, find solutions and figure out how to protect our children, because I think they're the most vulnerable when it comes to sexual harassment.
We are so blessed to have our therapists here today. So, Ma'am, who let yourself be introduced?
Okay, we're rehearsing.
Beautiful. My name is Josephine Kafuitete. I'm a counseling psychologist. I run my own personal firm that is Center for Life Balance, where I handle some of these cases, cuts across cases all over. And then I'm also a minister of God.
Wow.
And the school minister of God for a female mission, Center for Spiritual Empowerment, and also the school counselor for St. Benedict Subiri School, that is in Soma. I'm a court-connected mediator as well, so I sit on several panels and handle human issues.
Right.
So that is me.
You're welcome on our platform.
You're the perfect person for our show today.
Thank you.
Hi, boy.
How are you guys doing? It's good to be back.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So, discussing sexual harassment today. Your point of view will be very interesting because we're all women here, and I'm sure men see it from a totally different angle. We'd love for you to help us understand what some of the weaknesses are on your part, or the reasons why some of those advances we find offensive are okay for some men. If you can explain, but of course you can't represent every man, but we're hoping to get as much answers from you as possible.
As a man, first of all, and then I guess, in fact, no, sorry, let me say this other way around. As a human being, first of all, and then as a man, second, I find that there isn't any other perspective on sexual harassment than what it is. It is sexual harassment.
Wow.
It's not the perspective of a woman. It's not the perspective of a man. It is the condition of, have we crossed a line? And it works both ways. Let's not forget that as much as the majority of sexual harassment is perpetrated by men, there is sexual harassment that works in the reverse, right? So, not to defend men or the act of it, but I think as a human being, the concept of sexual harassment cuts across. There can't be any other perspective than if no is a no, it doesn't matter whether it's a man saying it, or it's a woman saying it, or it's a child saying it. And especially those that don't have a voice, the vulnerable. There is no other perspective than it is not acceptable, and so I feel that's a better way to approach it than to say, because I'm a man, there is a different perspective.
Yeah. But Ma'am, how would you define sexual harassment? What is the definition and what are the limits? Because we kind of all understand it differently, right?
Yes. So, depending on where you find yourself, sexual harassment is an unwelcomed approach or advances to either sex. Could not only be coming from a man to a woman, but either from a woman to a man, from a man to a child. That is an unwelcome approach or advances to someone, to the other person, to feel intimately or sexually aroused in a way.
Or even asking for a date. I think it cuts across trying to get somebody's attention.
You wouldn't say to invite somebody for a date is sexual harassment.
No, but if those advances were unwanted, would it qualify? So maybe you're sending too many letters or text messages, and
in the first place, you're asking. There would be always a first time to ask somebody for a date, and if the person says no, I'm not interested in, and you persist, then it could fall in the bracket of sexual harassment, because it means that an unwelcome approach or advances towards somebody to make the person feel
uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. So yes.
How would we define harassment? The word harassment, because it looks like harassment in itself for me is more like this unwelcome. But when does the sexual part comes in it? Is it when we talk about sexual, does it imply touch? What is sexual really?
So harassment, let's look at harassment in firstly. Harassment is something that is coming to you and it makes you uncomfortable.
Right.
You're being harassed. Friends can even harass their co-friend, right? You send derogatory words to your friend. It's harassing the person, making the person feel uncomfortable. So anything that you do to another to make the person feel uncomfortable is harassment. Now we add sexual to it, meaning that you are explicitly or implicitly coercing somebody to have conversation beyond certain boundary that would make him feel aroused in a way.
Oh,
wow. So I read somewhere also that, for example, if I went around spreading rumors about a friend's sexual life, it's sexual harassment also, even though it's not necessarily arousing any sexual feeling, but it's related to sex. So anything else, if it's a text message or a wink, like there are just certain things that, like you said, implicit or explicit. Some are very direct. You can tell that this person is out here, but some are a bit subtle, and so it might take you a while, but it's quite obvious. Some we don't really need to spell out. How about those little ones, like those little ones that people seem to think it's okay, like the touches?
yeah.
I just tap my back, and then you think, oh,
You
because
wouldn't
it's just a
say
tap.
good. You wouldn't say that is a little one. If you send rumors of a friend of yours about her sexual relations, sex or relationships are supposed to be established between two
Consenting
people
adults,
that are consented, okay? And everything that happens between those two must remain between those two. It's private. So for you, a third party, to pick it up and then send it overboard, it is harassment. It is an unwelcoming thing that you're making the person feel uncomfortable. So that is harassment. You go ahead and you're touching somebody and the person is not comfortable, it is harassment. Unless, of course, you touch me and I'm okay, I've given you the free will to touch me. However, I have consented to it. And within that context, it cannot be said that it is harassment. So when we come to harassment, we will find out what was the context within which this happened.
Right.
Yes.
So can I ask, Boy,
Yes.
personal experience or any stories you've heard of male friends or that have been sexually harassed and how it happened?
Oh, I mean, I've been in situations. I mean, it's interesting that we're having this conversation. And as
you sexually harassed them?
no, where I have experienced, I've experienced situations like we said, which I would classify as sexual harassment. But at the time, as much as I knew I was uncomfortable, as much as I wasn't happy about it, the culture of, you see, and so I feel like, let me take this a few steps back. I'm jumping all over the place. The reason I want to take this a few steps back is you said something about we've classified even little things as sexual harassment. But I feel like the law has had to progress to determine what sexual harassment is from either very small, in contextual terms, very minute detail, into larger, very obvious, this was sexually, I exposed myself to you when you, and because the context of where the world is that even subtle advances have put people in awkward situations. So we've made blanket laws to cover all behavior. And as much as I am a man in a man-dominated world where men perpetrate the majority of sexual harassment, I have been in situations where if I were to contextualize it and to document it, it would actually classify as, I worked in a large organization, an international organization where we were culturally diverse as being on 3 continents, in Europe, in Africa, and the Middle East. And in this organization were senior managers who would make very sexually blatant comments like, oh, I see you today, and stick their tongue out and lick their lips and grab you or grab themselves and thrust it. There was very blatant sexual misconduct, I would say. I mean, very bad behavior. And it happened, it wasn't just me, it happened in the context of, it was open. So, and I felt because it was so open, everybody said, well, it's not bad because
How did you feel about it?
I wasn't never ever comfortable. I mean, we laughed it off. I laughed it off because everybody else, nothing. And that's and so that's what I'm saying, that is as interesting as being a man in a male-dominated world. I still was not able to say I'm not comfortable with this, even though I wasn't comfortable with it. It was easier for me to laugh because everybody else was laughing it off. And that's why sexual harassment, and this is the point I'm getting to, is why sexual harassment continues, is that it's easier to laugh it off and say it wasn't what it was. Because you then become the outsider who's pointing fingers at the person who's been perpetrating this kind of, because if you find out, offenders are also repeat offenders, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of people who actually conduct either sexual abuse or sexual harassment, it's not the first time they've done it. It's a pattern of behavior.
You were in an organization with females, right?
Of course.
It happened to them. What did you do as a man? Nothing.
No, what I'm saying, harassment, it never translated to the abuse of when, so you see the point of doing something,
Exactly.
there's the point I'm trying to make, is that as a man, and this is the challenge, as a man working in an organization where nobody spoke up about it, the reason I'm pointing this out is that sexual harassment continues because we remain silent. Now, that is the point I'm trying to make, that because we remain silent, the reason we remain silent is nobody wants to kick against the establishment. That is the reality. The establishment being that everybody, women included, men included, and the people perpetrating it say, because it was done not one-on-one. It never happened that I was in a room with one person and he did it to me or she did it to me. It's we're in a room of 50 people and it happened and everybody in the room laughed. So if everybody in the room laughed, why are you going to be the guy who or the woman who stands up?
This person didn't even notice you show any displeasure.
No.
So that next time
No, there was never any displeasure registered by anyone.
But what do you
It was
say,
laughed
man?
about.
It was laughed about generally. And because it's laughed about generally, nobody's picking up the fight. And so we were all cowards. I call myself out today about it.
Yeah.
So
Right?
what would you say about the type of what you just heard? How do we tackle that?
So once he felt that this is uncomfortable, we normally follow the status quo.
Exactly.
Because everybody is silent about it, we fail to voice out the most important thing that would safeguard all
Everybody
of
else.
us. And in the long run, before we realize and we say Jack, it's gone way
Too
back.
far.
So what we need to be doing is that the moment you feel this is
Wrong.
your instincts tell you that this is wrong, there must be a platform where such things are discussed. So in organizations like this, so that is where human resource comes in. There must be that platform, and it must be code of conduct
Right.
within the organizational welfare, right? So that you feeling this, don't look at the next person. The next person is not saying anything, so you would not be the one to be the one pointing fingers. You must be the one to start
The conversation.
the right path or ways of
course.
doing things. There must be one person at all time.
Can we quickly move this to a smaller organization, a much smaller organization that's even more difficult to handle, the family, our home, and the sexual harassment that goes on at home with our children, our cousins. I kind like, if I'm to write a book, you'll be surprised. Like,
What is your experience?
my first experience would be an uncle or two touching my boobs when I didn't have any. Like that I remember. I don't know why. I don't even remember how old I was, but I remember that. And so when I was old enough to realize, okay, that wasn't okay. He shouldn't have done that. Okay, so we're gonna have to take a short break. We'll be right back. have guys. So we have Pamela here, Madam Johnson, and Boy. We're continuing the conversation on sexual harassment. We're moving into the home. And the home, because I have more than one personal experience, and so I'm very passionate about it. The first one I said, like I said, I was quite young, like probably between the ages of maybe 3 and 5.
That is very young.
But I only remembered later when I realized that, okay, so if this man touched my whatever boobs, I didn't have that, but it was wrong for him to have done that. And then my second experience would be from a teacher from school.
Yeah.
And he used to come home for extra classes because I had like a weakness in mathematics. But he made it worse by doing what he did because he was touching me under the table. And this was in a compound, like there were supposed to be people around. So the fact that he had the guts to do that in my home where there were like other people around means that this somebody who is like an abusive person. I think he has a lot of experience doing that and getting away with it. But I was afraid to talk about it. First of all, I wanted him to leave. I didn't want him to teach me anymore. But how to relate that to my parents was like a problem. I think I finally, because I kept saying I didn't want him to teach me, and I just spoke to somebody, an auntie who I think I could open up to. But if they hadn't listened, or if there wasn't that person I could talk to, what would have happened? I would have had to like sit there and then like endure being touched. So I think personally, I take offense when anybody touches me. I think maybe I might still have a thing
Those are
for
the
being touched.
sequels.
Exactly, because a few years, like about a year ago, I was selling wache. I had a nice little place I sell wache, and one of my customers came. He's a nice person. He chats with us when he comes and all that. So whilst talking, he tapped me, trying to draw my attention. And then right away, my mood just changed. Like I was upset and I couldn't hide it. So, and he didn't know what had happened. It was my cousin that had to tell him this is what he did. You see, that's how bad it is. Because he didn't even know that touching me wasn't okay.
Yeah.
He had to be told that this is what you did. And that's why it's a problem. So I personally have like those experiences, and so I'm very passionate. I think our parents should pay more attention, because sometimes you have more experiences. I'm sure you've heard people share stories. You've had to counsel people. Would you please shed a bit more light on this?
So, from what you're saying, you would think that you've grown and possibly that was in the past and your life is going on and you're cool. But I tell you, you would need to go back, confront that situation, go to the very end, whatever it did to you, and then relive all that and come to a better state of being now. Because how many years back and somebody just touches you a year ago, it just changes your mood. Yes, so something is that needs to be worked on to bring you to a perfect balance, to relate well with others. But this issue of people within our environment.
But let me specify though, it's not just somebody, it has to be a man. Like I don't consider it my family or my friends.
Yes,
you should have no business touching me. Like.
Certainly, and this could go all the way, possibly could even give you chills or resentment even towards your own husband. Yes,
it could get that bad.
It could be that bad, because right from the very tender age, a man, male figure, touches you and then was abusing you in that manner. Every man is equal to every man. Okay. So yes, that is how the mind works.
No, but I do have that challenge though. I feel like I don't trust my kids around like any man.
True.
I'm quite upset. So if I come home and I realize that okay, my kids are with my cousins and everybody else, and I realize that wait, one person has stepped out. I feel like there should be enough people in the house like looking at
all the time.
I feel like no, I don't care if it's an uncle. I just feel like there are no limits. Like a man is a man and he can do whatever anytime. So as for my kids, I feel like I don't think they're safe with any man.
So you're still living in the fear of the past. You're still living in the fear of the past, and this is what our homes should begin to introduce or educate our young ones.
Yeah.
Sex is something we hardly in our culture
we
hardly talk about
I agree with you.
We frown on it when a little child even comes and asks you, Mom, or even parents in the presence of your children, you're supposed to show the care, the love you have for each other. So it is no strange thing to them when they go outside there, okay, and when somebody else is beginning to introduce something of that nature to them. So in your home, your children must feel that sense of love, bonding, togetherness. Now, there's this case I had. A student was quite reserved, not relating, not looking, that's a girl. She wasn't looking her femininity, chose not to put on earrings. So that was a almost Form 2 to Form 3 student. All this started because right at a very tender age, the parents never made this girl feel loved, feel cared for, drew her closer. Every day leaves home and goes to work and are left in a compound house. So friends, and this child was about 5 years. Other friends come, male friends come, they play together. So this other male friend, or young as that, I think 2 years, 7 years, do you know you're beautiful? Parents never tell their children this in our context, right? African cultural context.
Yes.
So this young boy tells this child, you're beautiful. She doesn't believe it. This child would bring her something, make her feel good. So at that age of 5 and 7, 5 for the girl and 7 for the boy, this boy started making this little girl feel important and have sense of recognition. When her own parents are around, she doesn't feel that. So gradually, this little girl at the age of 5 had some bonding or closeness to this boy who makes her feel important.
Isn't her brother or relative?
No, a stranger, a family, a friend. So they grew, only this boy was the one she would relate with, play with, and along the line, this little boy would make advances, touch her. So something was generating. Parents go to work and they are there alone. They go, and then this boy would put on movie, whatever, explicit movies, whatever is in it, they'll watch. At that age, I would say, can we practice?
Wow.
They would practice. So this little girl feeling sense of importance from this boy knows that I am also a human being now. I am being cared for. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling special. And everybody has the need to feel special. So if it is coming from a direction that would lead you into such situations, then you would need to be careful. So parents, there's a lot that we are neglecting as our responsibility. And to talk about sex in our homes, it's something parents be the very first to introduce their words to such conversation, such that a stranger coming to you talking about that, you are in the know already. And it is no news to you. You can even tell the person, oh, my parents have shared this with me, and then it was them.
Because sometimes I think the first to give you certain information, the first person to give you some information seems like the one who knows about
you
it.
Look
so
up to.
they might be the person you go back to. So if the parent is the one to educate their child or children about sex, they would come back to them if they have issues concerning sex. And I remember Pamela mentioning something when we were discussing this earlier, that we seem to think, I mean, Africa or our tradition is there, but it's not like it used to be. Back in the day, it's fine. Like we're our brother's keepers, and even if you do something as a child, you do something that you're not supposed to, your neighbor can discipline you and do all that. It's not like that anymore. It's changed. So you can't just leave your child with another, like a neighbor or somebody, and assume that they will take care of them the way you would. It doesn't.
But at what age do you think we can start talking to the kids? Because we're talking about a 5-year-old girl. How do I explain to her that there is something called sex? You can't be taught. It's difficult.
At the age of even 2,
wow,
the child begins to know the difference.
Okay.
I am a boy. You're a girl. He looks at the nakedness of
Somebody
him
knows
or her.
about it.
Oh, what is this? You having something hanging in front of you.
Yes.
And me, I don't have some.
Everybody has
So naive at that age,
That's the
they're
time.
beginning to what? Discover themselves in the different gender they come in. So right from that stage, we must begin to educate our little ones from the time they ask questions.
Okay.
Okay? So what we do is we rather shut them down. Naughty girl, you don't talk about that.
Oh.
But it is not
It's there.
intentional that the child came and then asked. The
They're curious,
curiosity,
exactly.
the curiosity with which we learn everything around us, the child is seeing that this is also part of my environment.
It is close by, as proximate. In
Yes.
fact, I read a book that said baby boys actually start feeling sensation in their penis before they even start crawling. So they start, when you realize babies start pulling on their penises, it's actually because it feels good.
Yes.
And they're curious to explore that feeling some more.
That's why they
So you actually have to understand that even though girls go through a completely different progression, but boys do. So there is a point, like you are saying, that they begin to get curious because they feel, they touch, they experience. And so all of these things are going to have to be explained.
So at this very tender age, you make sure this child understands that this is my penis. This, for the girl, this is my vagina. This is a very sacred part of your body. You know what? God, out of all of this part is something, you see, it is not shown outside. It is hidden inside. God created it such that you just don't bring it out in the open. So as a boy and a girl, you need to keep this one of you all the time in hiding, in secrecy. You protect it. When we begin to have such conversation and somebody goes to play on that, no, my mommy says this one is sacred. This one is God's creation, very valuable creation. Nobody touches it. But we don't talk about it. And the children are curious this way. I was sharing a story of this student. Apparently, this girl with this boy that had respect for her, for whom she began to feel important, this boy jilted this girl at a point in time. Parents not available for her to even go to. She was broken-hearted at the age of, let's say, was it 9 years?
Wow.
9
Because
years,
she become
girl.
dependent on him.
This boy, because he's the only one that gives him
Any
sense
sort of validation.
importance.
Belonging.
And yes, so this girl was broken-hearted. And since then, it was a boy that made her to begin to wear earring, look at herself in the mirror, and have value for herself. The moment this boy jilted her, went to pick another friend of theirs, this girl started not dressing well. She started becoming very boisterous, very aggressive.
Wow.
And in session with her, God, she is somebody who would not allow anybody, not any close connection with her. She would beat you.
So she was actually
She's
that
been
strong
through
and
trauma.
she's been through a lot.
Yes.
I have a last question
Yes.
that is very
How about
important to
it?
me. You mentioned something earlier about what this girl went through, but I feel like the adults like me that are 20, 25, 30, women that have gone through those things where they've been deprived, and anytime they're in a relationship, they just think that giving sex to a man or allowing yourself to be touched is the right way to feel loved and accepted. How do we overcome those type of trauma?
Okay, so go on.
Okay, so you are in a relationship and you feel burdened by the relationship. You feel giving yourself to whoever you're in the relationship with is a chore. It is not only happening on the physical, emotionally, it is traumatic inside.
True.
And it is causing so much damage in your system, which you may not be physically aware of. But when you have to give in to somebody because I have to give it, relationships must be that which supports each other and promotes each other to become better. If you are in a relationship because I don't have a say, I must surrender, I must give all the time, it happens just because most women do not have sense of worthiness, importance, and purposefulness as to why they are here and why they even went into that relationship. They do not have voice.
But this example you're giving, it's a relationship, but then somehow it just reminded me of another scenario where we're discussing sexual harassment. So let's assume you're at a work environment and your boss, I mean, there are promotions coming up, you're not the only female there, but he kind of likes you, and so he's making advances, and you would probably entertain those advances because you think that gives you an upper hand or would help you. But this is a relationship. But you still have sexual harassment in there because you're giving this person that because you think that's what it would take to keep him.
That's
to
a
keep him in
huge
a
problem
relationship.
because I feel like a lot of men have told me that some women actually kind of entice them and they push you to the way they dress. You invite a girl, she comes at 12 midnight, she's wearing something extremely sexy, she's sleeping over, you're touching her, she's accepting, and then after a point she's like, no, how?
So I don't even want to jump in as a man on that one. I know, but let me say, okay, so, but you see, there is a fact, and so and I guess maybe this is a good way to end the conversation, is that there is a fine line that also we have to realize is being drawn in the sand. There is a point at which, first of all, everybody's allowed to say no. That is the first point, right? But yes, there are points where you came over. We had drinks. You wore a very nice dress because you wanted to look good. You looked good. We had a good time. But then all of a sudden, something changed. No, it's fine. Something did change. The truth is, you'll find that a lot of the times, unfortunately, there will become a situation of harassment, which will then progress into abuse, right? Because then the guy feels entitled that, well, you came here. You turned me on, so I must... The reality is it's not okay. It's still not excusable. Does it happen? Yes. How do we stop it? The conversation needs to keep happening.
Okay. So I think talking about how to stop it, I would like Mom Josephine to give us a few tips here and there.
Because we get frightened as women when that happens. You can't say no.
How do you stop it? Yeah. Because the guy locks the door and says, "Come on, you came over. Why are you?"
It's really not an option because most of us are in a very bad state.
Sometimes he
doesn't even lock the door. He just still holds on. He's like,
let's listen to the tips.
You don't want to feel embarrassed.
Let's listen to the tips.
So, in the first place, I said earlier on that women also harass men. We shouldn't only even look at it from the point that it is only men who are harassing women, but on the majority, it's men who harass women the more. Looking at the scenario, you go to a man's space, okay, and you have dressed also attractive with some of your inner features exposed.
Absolutely.
What is your intention for dressing that way? So that is also harassment to the man.
Indirect
yes,
harassment.
it's indirect harassment to the man.
So you've been harassed many times.
If you should dress and then have your legs showing all the way to somewhere closer to your hip, okay, your upper part exposed in a way, and you're sitting so close to a man, what are you expecting? So something naturally would be generated in the man. Now you go to the second level of even having drinks. You know, drinks would lure you into feeling all vulnerable, okay? So now you, the woman who is complaining of being harassed, you should know how you dress or you present yourself on every platform, if even it is in the workplace.
Yes,
okay.
I was going to say most cases actually really happen at work. So the tips, because this is your boss, someone you had a drink with might not even be as complicated as your boss, or you went to see a physician and he's kissing you in the office, like whatever. These are more difficult.
This is where we would have to groom we as women to have a voice.
How about the men? No, everybody talks about
I'm saying we, the women. We'll get there. We, the women. We need to have a voice. Okay. What is acceptable in your space and what is not acceptable? That must be your standpoint. You know what? A man would just, if you give in the next few days, this man will just tag you as, oh, she's just one of those.
Okay. So I take it that even at the workspace relationships, as women, we should let whoever we're dealing with know their limits.
Yes.
And that can be quite unspoken, right? So this, we definitely need to put more things on.
We need
Yes,
to put
we will. And
give
thanks so
women
much for
tips
coming.
as to how to handle all this, and then
Because this is very sensitive.
Thank you so much for being there.
Thank you very much.
We're always here. Thank you.
Yeah, he's representing.
Always a
the
pleasure.
men, so
Yes.
thank you.
A dangerous ground in this conversation, but you know, we managed to get through that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome.